Well, the Seahawks win in their Week 3 matchup with the Miami Dolphins. Why do I feel like this is a bad thing? Hello, welcome back to Zach Talks Hawks. My name is Zach, and here we talk everything Seattle Seahawks football. Again, different location for our normally scheduled programming, but I wanted to get this video out to you as soon as possible. Welcome back to the show. Here, we're going to discuss Seattle's Week 3 matchup against the Miami Dolphins. They win 24-3, and that means Seattle sits atop the NFC West, totally undefeated, 3-0, and I feel good about that. You know, you have a division that's filled with 1 and 2 teams, and Seattle's sitting on top of the West. Mike McDonald couldn't ask for a better start to the NFL season. However, there's a lot to this game that meets the eye if you dig a little deeper than just what the final score indicates. It was not really a contest throughout this whole game. Seattle managed to make sure that this was very well in control. This is a game that saw a lot of sloppy penalties, which we'll get into later here in the show. But ultimately, Seattle did what they were expected to do. They managed to hold a Miami offense, which does have a lot of tools, just not a quarterback right now, to keep them at bay. Only allowing 3 points in this contest, which I thought was very impressive for how many times Seattle decided they wanted to fumble and mumble their way through this game. And they did what a lot of us fans wanted them to do. Just simply take care of business and beat an opponent that, in all reality, we should beat. And it turned out to be a pretty dominating game. A couple things of note from this matchup with Miami. Miami was, of course, down to their second-string quarterback, minus Tua Tagovailoa this week, in Skylar Thompson, and Thompson tried. He was getting walloped in the backfield over and over again, and right before halftime, he decided to go for a terrible Hail Mary play on what was a bizarre way to end the first half. Earlier, Miami was flagged, I think, on 3 punts in a row, and they had to redo them, and Seattle got the ball and really couldn't do anything with it, and so gave it back to Miami, and Miami was sort of content on wasting the clock, and there was a play where Seattle sort of forced them into a Hail Mary, and they weren't ready for it by not rushing anybody. They got a flag on that play, so they had to redo it, even though there were people in the tunnel already. And Skylar Thompson then got walloped on that play, on a play that I don't think he was ready to throw a Hail Mary on, and it was just a super sloppy game from both teams. Later on into the third quarter, right away, he gets hurt. Dotson rampages up the middle and re-aggravates an injury that Thompson has, I think, towards his pec area. And then we got the Tim Boyle show in Miami, and Boyle is a journeyman quarterback who we learned very quickly is he's earned every bit of that journeyman title. It wasn't very good at all. He struggled mightily to get anything going for the Miami offense, and Seattle handled him, I guess I should say, pretty well. And turns out that defensively, Seattle had exactly what they needed to win the game. Geno Smith finishes with an effective day as quarterback, but as you might have seen from last week's videos, I really wanted this team to open up on offense, take advantage of what was going on, and they just continue to go back to the running back well in Zach Charbonnet, which he did finish with almost 100 yards, but that doesn't really tell you the whole story. If you watch the game, Seattle struggled to run the ball nearly the totality of the game, and it forced Geno into some pretty difficult situations with this offensive line in the passing game. It did cause him to throw 2 interceptions. One was a bit of a fluke where he gets hit from behind. The ball travels a mile straight up in the air and is caught by a defender. And then the other one also was not solely on Geno. It wasn't necessarily a bad decision. Geno was able to have a very effective game, found DK Metcalf really early for a strike as Metcalf runs away from the defense. Geno throws a deep ball on single coverage high and hits Metcalf, and he does the rest. He runs all the way into the end zone for a 70-yard plus touchdown, and that really got the fan base going. It kept the fan base into the game early. Seattle was up early big on this Miami team by jumping out to a quick 14-point lead, and then the offense sort of didn't do anything for basically 2.5 quarters. It was a back and forth game, and this is where we get to the sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly spot of what I want to talk to you about today here in our Zach Talks Hawks Seattle recap show. Seattle looked really good on defense. They are continually able to pressure the quarterback, and we've seen that now against 3 different offensive lines. We've seen it against the Broncos, the Patriots, and the Miami Dolphins. Not all 3 of those teams are world beaters by any stretch of the imagination, but in terms of schemes, Mike Macdonald is doing a really good job at getting his front set of players ready and prepared and putting them in the best situations possible. Boye Mafe is continuing his reign as soon to be a household name in the NFL. He had a very strong end of the season last year. It looks like he's keeping that up this year, heading into early parts of this season. Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy both get hurt, so those are our interior defensive linemen. And at that point in the game, I was pretty scared. I was like, well, if Miami does anything now, they're going to run the ball and they're going to run it down their throat. And that just simply wasn't the case with McDonald's defense. It's sort of this next man up mentality from what we saw in the Carroll days, but it makes a little more sense is probably the best way to go about it. These teams now are built so that your talent doesn't necessarily put you in a box of where you play on the field. McDonald loves to move guys around and is able to make guys flexible depending on their talent. And we really saw that with the depth that is present on our defensive line. Although our 2 interior rushers got hurt, Seattle did a really good job of continuing to pressure the quarterback, staying disciplined in their edge rushing game, which is what I said was a key to victory last week, making sure like a runner like Skylar Thompson doesn't really hurt them. Tim Boyle's a bit of a different story, but we weren't really expecting him to play well at all this game if he ever was going to get some snaps, and he eventually did. It was the run game of the Dolphins that was pretty stifled and forced Miami, of course, playing from behind to be a one-dimensional team. And that plays really well into Seattle's hands. To have a team that's able to protect a lead is critical in today's NFL. I mean, you saw the Baltimore Ravens yesterday almost blow their game to the Dallas Cowboys, sort of collapsing in the 4th quarter. More and more teams are getting laxed and letting others get back into the game as the game wears on. And I think through the first 3 weeks of the season, I'm starting to see from this defense that they are just built to continue the pressure all throughout the game. It doesn't matter who's on the field. As you can tell yesterday, folks got hurt, new people got in. And I really like that about this team. It's sort of different from a number of what we would call good teams in the NFL. And Seattle is built for these moments of playing with the lead. This defense is very opportunistic when it comes to that. The bad and the ugly of this game, however, is where I want to land for the majority of this video. Because unfortunately, Seattle wins, and a lot of novice fans are going to feel really good about being 3-0 and being 2 games up on a division, which is great. However, let's pump the brakes. There's a number of bad things that are still present with this squad, and one of those things is just how sloppy this game was. If you were watching this game, you might have thought that the referees were a third team playing on the field for however long they were out there. It was brutal. Both sides, both Miami and Seattle suffered from many penalties this game. And it was just ugly, and you're not going to be able to get away with committing those many penalties against various teams in the NFL. I know the NFL has heightened their awareness about illegal formations with tackles and whatnot, and that was a big, big thing in this game. Oh, man, I wish that would stop. I wish Seattle would be a bit more disciplined, especially with defensive holding and defensive pass interference. That came to bite them a little bit. They're lacking in terms of interior depth on the offensive line, is hurting them with silly penalties like holding and whatnot, trying to protect Geno Smith when they get blown off the ball. It's bad. This team is one of the more undisciplined teams that I have seen out of Seattle in quite a little while through the first 3 weeks of the season, and they need to button that up as they prepare to play some better teams, including next week against the Detroit Lions, and what will be an awesome game. These two teams just seem to throw their defenses out the window for a week every time they play each other, and they score a crazy amount of points, and Seattle somehow always wins that game. You'll see my predictions on that game in the next video, but that should be an awesome game for next week to look forward to. But all in all, you're not going to get away with playing this brand of sloppy football against teams like the San Francisco 49ers, teams like the Los Angeles Rams. Even though they're both banged up, even though we have a lead against them in the division, we haven't played them yet, so those games are going to really count as Seattle continues to try to put a better stranglehold on this division. You got to clean up those penalties. Another ugly thing that I saw in this game that I think isn't going to be talked about a lot, especially by the national media, but really by novice fans, is going to be how this team decided to approach this game. If you watched my episode last week, you saw how crazy I was when it came to urging this team to just try something different. Be a pass-first team, knowing that your interior offensive line isn't built right now to run the ball very effectively. And with K9 out and having to rely on Zach Charbonnet, although he's a good back, he's not going to be a world beater. It's going to be hard to run the ball, so just open up the running game by passing the ball. Seattle refused to do that this game. They kept going back to the well of running Zach Charbonnet, and you saw the effects of that in the second half. The offense became stagnant. It wasn't really explosive. Charbonnet really struggled to find the hole. Now, he did run the ball enough to get to a place late in this game to rattle off a couple decent, hard-fought runs. That's a thing I can say about Charbonnet is you run him a lot, and during the game, it might not look like a lot, but towards the end of the game, he'll be able to wear some guys down. And he was able to get 2 touchdowns on the day, but that really, it didn't look like a dominating run game. And I know that's what Seattle's trying to go for. He struggled a lot during this game, even though his stats might be inflated otherwise. Another ugly part of this game that I will continue to lament about until I see some changes or until K9 comes back and it becomes a moot point is that Kenny McIntosh, and I'm probably one of the few Seattle fans that really, really, really likes Kenny McIntosh. He was hurt all year last year. Coming out of this injury, played really, really well in the preseason. And with these 2 games where Charbonnet's been able to handle the load, it was this game that McIntosh, very late in the game, after the game was already sealed, after Seattle had struggled all day to run the ball well, they finally put the 3rd-string running back in. And he was able to hit the hole and be explosive. And he rattled off multiple double-digit yard gains. He did struggle at times because the offensive line isn't, world beaters out there. But I love his decisiveness. I love his explosiveness through the hole, even if it is the smallest of ones. His first run, he stops and he explodes forward, and you can see on the replay his neck is like sort of smooshed between 2 Miami Dolphins, and he's just powering through. I want to see that out of my running backs, and I want to see that all the time. And you can tell McIntosh is running with purpose because he wants more in-game carries. I think he's deserved more in-game carries, especially when K9 is hurt, this team, if you're going to be successful moving forward, has to be flexible in the running game if that's what you want to do. I'm able to succeed with the fact that Seattle's just never going to stop being a run-first mentality team. They have a defensive-minded head coach, so naturally they want to run the ball, control time of possession, keep their defense fresh. Okay, so you're not going to do the offensive thing that, at least for me, on paper makes the most sense. Do the thing you want to do with a little more urgency, a little more thought into your run game, other than just sending the same guy out there who has struggled over and over and over again. Put in another fresh set of legs to try to upstart your run game. It's a shame that Seattle waited the whole game after it was all said and done to finally give us a glimpse of what McIntosh might look like in real gameplay, but it didn't really matter at that point. He was able to show flashes, but we're not quite sure what he might look like against defenses who haven't given up hope yet. I really, really hope if K9 continues to be out, McIntosh is able to get some more carries. But at the end of the day, even when K9 comes back, this team has to be flexible with the running backs. Right now, they have shown, hey, if you're RB1 on the depth chart, you are getting 100% of our carries this game. You're going to be our third down back. You're going to be our power back. You're going to be our shifty back. You're going to be the back that goes out and catches all the footballs. And you're just going to do it all if you're RB1 on the chart. And that's a really old school way of thinking about football that I don't think this running back room is healthy enough to handle. As much as we want Kenneth Walker III to be that crazy 1,000-yard plus rusher, double-digit touchdown guy, he's injury prone. He simply is. And Charbonnet's not that far behind him. He's got a history of being nicked up too. And McIntosh is also hurt. One of the ways you can negate that is by making sure your running backs get equal carries throughout the game and you divvy up the workload between these three running backs. The NFL has shown that that model works, and I don't know why Seattle's unwilling to go there. But man, it just continues to show over and over again that Seattle is unwilling to change the way they think offensively about football. And for me personally, that's the ugliest part of this game. Yeah, penalties, it's early in the season, maybe you're trying to figure stuff out. I don't really, you can try to explain that away. Coaching ineptitude, you can't. And at the end of the day, yes, Seattle gets a big win. Yes, they're 3-0. Yes, they're 2 games up in the NFC West. But if you take a closer look at this football team and you compare them to the other teams that are undefeated in the NFL, it's very clear. Seattle's the weakest 3-0 team across the NFL. And they very well could have lost the game against the Patriots. They had to struggle to win against the Broncos. Fortune favored them with the injury matchup against the Miami Dolphins. But honestly, if Tua is in that game, I don't know if Seattle wins that game. They might win it in a close game, but they certainly don't win it on the scoreboard in the dominating fashion that they did. My biggest concern about this team moving forward is that you need to be flexible with how you operate your offense. You can choose to go back to the Seattle way of football and try to run the ball a bunch, but at the end of the day, you got to be smart about it because your personnel is not equipped to be, one, productive when you run the football that many times with this offensive line, and 2, healthy if you're going to run the football all the time with the same back. Doesn't matter what back. I really hope Seattle changes their offensive scheme a little bit to adjust to what they want to do. I'm sort of giving up hope that Brian Grubb's just going to take over and be a pass-first team. I don't think you're going to see that out of this team this year now. If there was any opportunity they were going to do that, that was going to be this game, and it's clearly not. So they're okay with being who they are and go about doing it the smart way. What do you think down in the comments? I feel a little pessimistic about being 3-0. I trust me, I enjoy being 3-0. I love this team and how they're really taking advantage of others' misfortune and being up 2 games in the NFC West. That's big. You can't ask for a better start if you're Mike McDonald and company. But how do you feel about the X's and O's of this team? I want to know down in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. Let's start a conversation about the Seattle Seahawks team that, through it all, is 3-0, and they were able to beat the Miami Dolphins decisively on Sunday. Can't wait to talk to you Thursday. Get into our picks. I'm pretty sure everybody who picked teams in the NFL this week had an abysmal week, and that includes me too. So we'll go over our predictions from last week, make some new predictions for this week, and preview Seattle's matchup against the Detroit Lions in prime time. Stay tuned for that as well. We might be doing a live stream of that game. First time we're doing a live stream in a long time. Can't wait to talk to you again about Seattle Seahawks, but until we meet again, my name is Zach. Keep talking Hawks. Click on one of these videos that's going to pop up down here below. Like, comment, and subscribe. You never know what you might find here on the channel. I look forward to talking to you again about Seahawks real soon. See you later.